Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a brand new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show I do to celebrate the fact that the hobby of tabletop role playing games is now half a century old. And I'm doing this celebration by bringing on people that, well, I was going to say people I know, but not always people I know. Bringing on people who have worked in and around the tabletop gaming milieu, in particular tabletop role playing games, and just have discussions about their life, their careers, their experiences at and around the table. And while I do that, I very often will be engaged in drawing a cartoon homage to a classic piece of gaming art. Hello, Michael. Thank you for joining in the chat this evening. Those of you who have been following the show for a while know that since early summer, I've taken a few uh, weeks off from doing these original interviews and drawings to catch up on art that I began in earlier episodes and never finished, and I'm making some headway in that. But beginning today, I'm going to start mixing that in again with some new interviews. And today, the impetus for that is that this week is Gen Con, the Gen Con Game Fair in Indianapolis, the best 4 days in gaming, as they say. Hello, David Schwartz. Thanks for tuning in. And lots and lots of people, 70,000 of my closest friends will be in Indianapolis for the convention and the Ennies Awards, all the hullabaloo that goes around this big event. I, of course, not there this year. I haven't been in the last few years. Maybe next year, we'll see. But I do like to celebrate the fact that Gen Con's going on. And while 70,000 people are there around the world, there are lots of people who also can't make it. So it seems like a good time to do online live streamy shows that are, help people feel like they're in a Gen Con mood. That's what I'm doing tonight. I've got with me a guest who's been on previously, a good friend of mine. We have worked together, we have gamed together, we have Gen Con together, and today we're going to be talking about lots of things. In fact, anything you want to ask about, but we're going to start by talking about Gen Con and our history with it, and how it's been over the years, how it's changed, how it has changed over the years, and I don't know. Neither of us has been in a few years, so I don't know we're the best people to have comments on what it is like. But that's never stopped us before. We've got opinions, and we're usually happy to share them. So, in order for that to do, I'm going to bring on my good friend and colleague and gaming dinosaur, Jeff Grubb.
Hey, good to be here.
Hello, Jeff
I have a
Grubb.
I have a shirt that says "Gaming Dinosaur,"
I know
so
you do.
it's just got a little patch with a triceratops on it.
Which is why I feel okay calling you that.
That's okay.
You proudly proclaim it on your
I
clothing.
am. hmm
Michael,
And I'll
Chat,
and I'll point out I was actually at Gen Con last year.
were you last year? So
Went
there you go. You
last year,
beat me by
the
a number.
50th anniversary. I did a
Right,
lot of conventions,
right. I did a
and
lot of
after each
things.
one of them, I was sick. So therefore, I'm not doing conventions this year. So
I did a lot of things to celebrate the 50th year. Going to Gen Con was not one of them.
yeah. Oh, well. And actually,
Uh,
even that is untrue because I've been roped into doing a seminar at PAX at the end of the month. So,
well, so I mean, your uh, your convention attendance is
mhm,
down, but it's not gone.
yes. Well, and also it's local.
Right.
Basically, I can drive in. It's in Seattle in the new big convention center they have, an annex they have. So
You may just go into your seminar and never touch the floor.
that's true. I'll be handed over person to person as we go
Right.
forward.
Michael in chat says hello to you, Jeff, and reminds us all that he's a Yunzer like you.
Yinzer, Yunzer. From Pittsburgh. Natives of
Yes.
Pittsburgh go as Yinzers, as in Yins going downtown.
Yes. Well,
Hmm.
the two people I know who most proudly proclaim their Pittsburgh affiliation are you and Michael. So
Okay. Mhm.
there you go. Um, so yes, you. What's the earliest Gen Con you went to?
I had to look this up, but it was 78.
Gen Con
Gen Con
78.
11, which was the first Kenosha
First one at,
convention.
is that was that Parkside in Kenosha or
Parkside. Yeah, Parkside University, which was this long string of buildings, classrooms and everything. And then there was a green space, and then there was a gymnasium. And all the events were being held in classrooms along both sides. And the dealer's area was in the gymnasium. So,
You know what? I've been to a few conventions held at universities, and classrooms turn out to
mhm.
be really good spaces to do uh, role playing events.
They are. They are. And we had like large groups, 8, 9 people who were, part of a particular team at that time. And that was just was an adventure. We had what occurred was a member of my regular D&D group, his family had a house on Lake Geneva, on
Nice.
Lake Geneva. And we would go out early, basically spend a few days gaming, and then go off to Gen Con, and then from there go to Purdue University and check in for the semester. So the timing worked out really really well. And this pre-convention was originally called GrubCon, and then became known as Dave Fest. And because Dave was the guy whose family owned
Right.
the house, and
It seems
we had
unfair that if
T-shirts made
it was
because, of
his
course,
family's
in
house. It seems unfair if it was his family's house. It would be called GrubCon.
Exactly. Well, we had um this is Lake Geneva, so there was a T-shirt place in Lake Geneva, so therefore we could have regular access to custom-made T-shirts. So therefore we had T-shirts made. So was Gen
Nice.
Con still largely wargaming? No, RPGs had really taken off, and it was much more of an RPG con. A wargaming convention, board games, miniatures was much more Origins. In fact, that was one of the dualisms back then, is that Gen Con was known for being much more of a role players convention. There were miniatures, there were board games, there were, SPI war games type of thing, but primarily it was a had already become an RPG convention. So
And was it primarily um, RPGA tournament style games or
the RPGA wasn't there yet. Okay, but it was. We did have the D&D Open, which was a big championship type game, which ran all 4 days. Games modules like Vault of the Drow and the A series were part of the where it got their first public view. Then, in fact, I ran the A series when I was a DM because they recruited DMs from the universities, including Purdue, and so I came up to run for the AD&D Open, which was run by Bob Blake,
hmm,
and that was just that really was exciting time of year. We'd have a large group. We'd be in a gaming session. One of the adventures I had was basically the final encounter. I kept doing damage to them until the players said, "Okay, stop." And when the DM said, when the player said, "Okay, we're done with this," that's when they won the tournament. And
okay.
literally, that's what happened. I kept throwing stuff at him, and one of them just said, hang on, stop, just stop." Okay, okay, I'll stop. We're done, and that was the resolution for that particular tournament. But in fact, but one of the reasons we ran one year, and of course I recruited some friends from Pittsburgh who were also, gamers and basically as DMs, and they came out and they ran games all 4 days, and they at the end of it, one of them basically said loudly, "We could design a better tournament than this one." And he said it too close to Bob Blake. So Bob spun on his heels and said, "Congratulations, you're designing next year's Gen, Gen Con Open." And that's what we did. It was the three of us and Len Lakofka, who was added to the mix, and we designed it and play tested it and delivered it like in February for an August convention. And on the strength of that, um, I was hired by TSR.
Mm.
I mean, I was applying, and I basically called up and said, because I had a reason to call up, because I want to see how we were doing. Is everything fine? Have you play tested it? Any feedback? Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a job. So so that basically has got me in the door as being a game designer. And since I was the coordinator for it, it was basically showed them I had some chops. So
What
that was my audition.
what do you remember about that AD&D Open that you designed?
Practically nothing of what I designed. The whole thing was the quest for the king. The king has a horrible disease, or he's been poisoned, and you've got to go find the antidote. And every quest, we had seven different quests we had to design. So, because basically we would run two on the first day, two on the second day, two on the third day, and then the final on Sunday morning. And of course, each one of them had to be different because the players did not um, we didn't want players to be able to come out of the first session and then tell people later or join other sessions and say, "Oh, this is what's going to happen." So I designed three or four of them, and Frank designed one, Jeff designed one, and Lenny designed one. So that's um, Um, that was about that was about the time. And Lenny's was like a graveyard search open field thing. We had one where we shrunk you down to like little size, and you had to go through a tree, and you were fighting normal size birds that had rock stats and that sort of thing. And it was a lot of fun. It was really enjoyable, and putting it all together. I had the opportunity because after I left Purdue, after I graduated, I got a job as an air pollution control civil engineer. I
Mm.
designed the housings. These were big vacuum cleaners on stilts, and you'd hook them up to a um, factory, and you'd suck all the bad air into it, and you'd go through these bags, and then to empty the bags, you had a little offset wheel at the top, and that's called a wheelabrator. And this company was
Okay.
called Wheelabrator Fry, and you would run those, and all the dust would come back down and fall into a train car that would then be hauled away to a farm in upstate New York where it laughed and played for the rest of its life. We didn't worry about that. But I lasted about a year before the Reagan recession, and they laid off a good chunk of the company at that point. And so I had time, so I basically took over and was part of that, and applied for work at TSR among other places. The question was how long I've been out of college before I got hired by two. About a year and a half. About a year and a half. It just
Long enough
so
to
it
make
was
a couple of vacuum cleaners.
a couple what?
Couple of
Vacuum
vacuum
cleaner.
cleaners.
Yeah. Well, it was great. It was one of those, and I'll be honest. A lot of what I do as a game designer has benefited from my time as a civil engineering student and as a practitioner. In the fact that we had critical path thinking, which basically survives in every meeting I am as JIRA, of basically organizing all your tasks and putting them in line. And also that sharp left hand turn when you're building a structure and you got everything set up. And then there's that live rail line they forgot to tell you about that's just 6 feet off your northwest corner. So and so everything has to be redesigned. So
It struck me when you were describing that D&D Open how similar
mhm.
that construction is to doing some of the large quests that you do now for online
Yes.
games.
It is, and when and one thing we were doing that got picked up when the RPGA started doing its, tournaments as well, and which was after I joined the company, is the idea that we had certain slots we should fill. So in order to get some balance between the various adventures,
Mm.
where we should have an introductory adventure, introductory combat, so everybody gets a feel for how to fight, how you're running combat, and then we're going to have a big group fight. We're going to have a big monster fight. We're going to have a monster disguised as something else. The one from my original was a big, dusty, gelatinous cube. And you come in as a big stone block in the middle of the room. They don't see anything else. It's just a big stone block. The one test group threw the halfling on top of it, and so the halfling is sinking
Just
down
sinking into
into
the.
the gelatinous cube. Because and that's that sort of trick or trap, that sort of thing. So one non-combat encounter that you can utilize to basically have some sort of interaction that you don't necessarily have to fight, but you can if you want.
All right, I have. I'm going to switch over here, but Dave Shepard asks, want to know if Bob Blake ever talked to you about the Pelham campaign setting that featured in C4 to find a king and C5 the Bane of Llewellyn.
No, he didn't, and I did not know about them. So therefore, I can't. The C series, every letter back at TSR had a
Yeah.
meaning, and C was for convention, and it was for those ones that came out of various conventions, which included some later RPGA stuff as well. So I don't know where when they ran, but they basically had the Open and the RPGA tournaments for a few years before it sort of shifted all entirely over to the RPGA.
I'm going to start drawing, and my drawing today is going to be an homage to the program cover for the current Gen Con. This is what people who are
Yeah,
in Indianapolis this weekend will be seeing on their convention uh, covers, and I think it's a really nice uh,
it is.
Art
It's a
Nouveau
very impressive
style
cover.
um, piece, and I'm blanking on the name of the designer right now, which is very mean of me. I put it in the show notes though, so you can look it up there. Um, I think it's really gorgeous, so I'm gonna do a homage to this.
Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
think that's a really nice piece. I mean, they've again the Gen Con 11 uh, uh, program book
mm,
was released months in advance, so everybody could read all of the all the events, and basically put in for them, and was on cheap newsprint, and had like a design of a couple swords and some dice. It was all like two color format at best. So they've really, improved. And I know in last year's program book, I'm not sure if this, one of the members of my old dungeon crew at Purdue, she does cosplay now. She had one of her costumes was in the program book itself, which was really kind of cool. So,
um, Injun Joe pops in and says he had been looking recently at your Alcademe material,
oh
and
yes,
I mean he says no more than that, other than he's been looking
that
at it. That's all the
he
stuff.
bought the DOS game, Al Qadim, the Genie's Curse,
Wow,
which
that's
I've never
fantastic.
played, but I'm glad that it exists. So
um, Megan Lara. Oh, thank you, Michael. Megan Lara is the artist who did this piece.
ah, okay.
Uh, Very lovely piece. I'm not familiar with her work, but I've been moved to want to look at a bunch more of her stuff because this is just so nice.
Hmm.
Um, so you go back to Gen Con in 1978.
Yes.
I go back, oh, not quite that far, but quite a ways back also. Uh, um, I won't
What was your
embarrass
first Gen Con?
my first Gen Con wasn't until the mid 90s.
Okay, so you
But
were at Mecca.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
I'd been to Origins, but I'd never gotten to Gen Con prior to working in the industry.
Hmm.
Um,
So you were with what, West End at that time?
I was with West End. I'd been to
Okay.
Origins when it was in, um,
Baltimore.
yes, before working with West End, but
Hmm.
didn't go out to Gen Con. But still, a while.
Yep.
Um, and so you were there as recently as last year. What are some of the ways that strike you most about the way the just not? I mean, it's not just Gen Con, but Gen Con in particular. How conventions have changed over that period of time.
Well, the big change for Gen Con, of course, is the size. It is huge. We talked about the dealers area being in a gymnasium at the first Gen Con I attended, and that was impressive. There were, all these booths, and I met Phil Foglio for the first time there, and uh, the and this was, just really impressive. And now it's just massive beyond compare, and it's just like spreading out, and it seems to take over another hall every time I see it. Plus the big game companies have their own rooms where they're running tournaments and demos, and selling some stuff on the side, and it's just like a big the whole your feet really hurt after after a modern Gen Con. I think the heart of it, though, is in the areas where they're playing, like Lucas Oil Stadium in
I say, talk about Gen
Gen
Con is
Con.
not only
Yeah.
taken over the entire convention center; it's taken over
Oh,
the football stadium.
we talked about how we were in classrooms before, and now basically one of the things for Mecca was basically all of the um, uh, drapery, all of the we had these little cells with fabric hanging down, and it was sometimes it was a little difficult because they need to really kill the sound carrying over from other groups.
Right.
But this was something that has evolved over time. So there's a lot of, but that's the heart. That's where people are playing the games. That's where people are engaging with it. There's a lot of the guys who are running in some of the smaller large halls have their own demo areas for their operation. And one thing I enjoyed was there seeing the people who are playing train games, and there's a whole wing of 20 tables of people playing train games, and there are collectible card games, and there are miniatures games, and there's a hall set aside for miniatures, which are very impressive as well. I think conventions have a really diverse type of clientele. It's not just card games and not just role playing games. So one may be larger than the other. It's not just miniatures games. A really great. There were two really great conventions in uh, Wisconsin. One is Gamehole Con in Madison, and the other is Gary Con. Um, and Gary Con's at the old Playboy Resort at the edge of town, and they're tight for space just because there's just so many people who want to attend, but they've got it really set up well, and they're well organized. And everything works out well, but people come together, and it's basically you're seeing a lot of different games and gamers. And the same goes for Gamehole Con as well, the which has, I think it was the Alliance Energy Center or something,
Mm.
and that had a nice setup as well. And they're spreading out as well. They've what
So
they do is they hmm?
I would say one of the things I find interesting about I agree, right? The size is just almost incomparable. But back in the early days, Gen Con felt huge. It's
Oh
the
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's
Oh my
always
gods. Mhm. When we moved to, Mecca, it was just, "Oh my god, how are we ever going to fill this space?" You know?
um.
In
So
the
I
lines,
find it
especially the
interesting.
first day, the lines I remember, just being, because I was on the inside, but basically, walk up in the morning and the lines are going down the street in Milwaukee and around the corner and up the next street. And it just was really impressive for that Kenosha convention that I attended. One of them had to entertain the um, people as they were waiting in line to get their packages and everything. Well, we had a band called Uncle Duke and the Dragons, and they sang D&D songs. Duke Siegfried was, the lead for it, and there were several other people who probably don't want to admit that they were a part of that. But
And Duke Siegfried was, for those who
Duke
don't know,
Siegfried was, oh, he was. Um, I want to try and remember the miniatures operation he was part of. I want to say Ralph Grenadier. I believe it was Grenadier,
Grenadier.
but he came on board. He was part of the, I believe, miniatures wing of the company for a while, and he was very much the showman. And later on, he would be running uh, um, corporate weekends where people were doing sand tables as a team building, miniatures as a team building exercise. So he was one of the older, more original members of the D&D group. So, and yes, he was known as Uncle Duke.
Um, so that to me, it weirdly is kind of one of the ways Gen Con has stayed the same. Right? This
Hmm.
the scope by real raw numbers is huge, right? Is a big shift.
Hmm.
It's nothing compared, but
It's a
but
huge shift. Hmm.
it's always been that you went to Gen Con and it was much bigger than you thought it could possibly be. It's just that now
And
conventions have gotten so huge overall that
and everyone was there. I mean,
yeah,
literally, this was the place where you could find that particular game that you've heard of, but you
yeah,
haven't been able to find anywhere at your friendly, hobby store, or nobody knows exists, or basically, I always find those to be the unique, um, exciting things, stuff I haven't seen before, that I haven't been exposed to, and say, "Ooh, this looks interesting." So therefore, I always pack light going out because I know I'm bringing books back. So,
yeah. I think that is one of the biggest changes to what Gen Con is. Um, it's no longer with the rise of the internet.
right.
It used to be as just like you were describing. You went to Gen Con, so not only could you find the stuff you couldn't find at your game, you to find
Hmm.
out what's going to happen in the next year.
Yes.
All the companies would have seminars. You'd hear about things that happened that you didn't know about, or what was coming up that you could anticipate.
We had a lot of seminars where we, told tales out of school and we shared information and we told people about what we were doing. And that has really diminished over time
Yeah.
just because people are recording everything now on their
Well, I mean, I
phones.
think that's part of
So,
it,
so we had very much a case of, well, someone who looks like Jeff Grubb might say this in
right?
response to your question.
What was the event that no one admitted to being there? Someone who looked like Jeff Grubb was that?
There was a game designers award, which were
Oh yes,
joke awards, which were handed out every year. Like the Weston Handshake Award
right.
for gaming marketing,
What was the name?
the
What was the
Crete and
name of
Bake
those?
Award for tchotchkes. Hmm?
What was the name of those awards? That's what I'm.
The Game Designer Awards.
Was it the Game Designer Awards?
It was something very, very simple like that. And the hilarious thing is, Chaosium won several of them. And then the next day at their booth, they had a sign up, winner of the Game Designer Awards. 5 Game Designer Awards. So, they were promoting it. But it was very much a joke type of award. I got one the year I injured myself at Gen Con. Uh, the Jeff Grubb Award for injury from patting oneself on the back. So the the story there for those who know it is literally I dislocated my shoulder. And this was a case where, we were prepping for like a seminar and everything. I was going down an escalator and I was looking for Ed Greenwood, and Ed suddenly appeared at the top of the escalator on the floor above talking to someone. So being an idiot, I turned around and started running back up the escalator and almost made it. And the last step, I tripped and fell and just drifted all the way back down to the bottom. And Kate, my wife, was coming out, and people, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital, but the emergency room, but I've got to really make sure everything's set up for the convention, for the seminars and everything we're doing. And Kate comes in and she finds that that he keeps running to people saying, "Oh, have you seen Jeff? He looks horrible. His shoulder is gone." And it just so she finally catches up with me and drags me off, and we go to the emergency room in Milwaukee, and they shoot me up, and I don't go under, and I don't go under. And finally, they say, "Okay, we've given him enough drugs. Let's just pop it back in." And they pop my shoulder back in, and then Kate, bless her heart, did allow me to come back to the show for to be at a party that evening. And people say I was much more pleasant than they've ever seen me before. So, that was my adventure with injuring myself at Gen Con at Mecca. So I see a note from Dave, basically a question for Jeff about Shannari. DL5, Dragons of Mystery, has it as a planet, but Spelljammer doesn't mention it. I'd say it's a slip up as opposed to a deliberate act of vandalism. So therefore, that we did not have it in for Shannari, so we got rid of the planet. But probably something that we just missed at that time. Whose idea was the giant TSR castle? Um, I don't know. It was
I think that
marketing.
must have been whoever was in charge of facilities that found out they could do it. I think it
Pretty
wasn't an
much.
idea.
I mean, now the castle, for those tuning in, was basically like 8 different 10 by 10 by 25, 30 feet towers, and we would run demos in each one of the towers. So we'd have one tower for Al-Qadim, and one tower for Spelljammer, and one tower for D&D, and a big open space in the middle, and basically the dealers there, the area where we were selling stuff. And that's where the executives were hanging out. So our VP of finance was running the cash register behind it. They were selling things as well. So we basically were set up for that. Previously, we had a smaller uh, booth that basically we had to assemble. And mind you, everybody worked Gen Con. This was a requirement when you join the company. You will not take off vacation days during Gen Con week. You are going to be there, and you're going to be working. And so we're building a lot of
Yeah, Gen
those
Con was a
setups and
lot
helping.
of extra work for if
It
you
was a
worked at
lot of
TSR. Gen Con
yeah,
was
but
a lot of extra work because
it was also yeah.
you had to set up, you had to prepare for it.
Mhm.
This is on
Yep,
top of your regular production
a
schedule.
regular job.
We had to do all of
Hmm.
the preparation for the month or two or more ahead of time. We had to
Right.
go down to Milwaukee to physically set up the show the week before.
Hmm.
We had to put in 40 hours of work at the show over 4 days, on top of the
Yep.
40 hours we were doing on our work on whatever our assignment was. And some people had to also do breakdown afterwards. So it was in the next week. It was a lot of extra work.
And often and early on, it was a case of we would drive up in the morning from, Lake Geneva to Milwaukee. We'd commute and then get there and run, and then we'd come back, and eventually we had hotel rooms and everything, but it just was, uh, when we did Al Qadim, the demos for release, Andrea Hayday and I, we were, um running the demos. We were chiefly running the demos, and I pick her up, and basically we're driving in, and she's saying, "So, do we have a plan here?" I said, "No, we're just gonna run some stuff. Basically, you run into a genie, and basically, and you fight." And she did not appreciate that much. So we on the trip from Lake Geneva to Milwaukee, we came up with about 5 or 6 basic plans for what we would do based on the miniatures we had and what we had, and it ran really well. I got from the Lake Geneva um, uh, school a large brass gong from the orchestra,
oh,
and
oh, that's you. We have you to thank for that.
oh, yes, I am the one to blame for the gong, and it was a case where it was hilarious because we people would hear we'd ring the gong at the beginning of the demo, we ring the gong at the end of the demo, and when the dealers area heard the second gong, they knew had to bring out copies of Al Qadim because they would sell more. But Jim Ward loved that
We
gong,
love that
and he
gong.
would come by and he would thwack it about 12 times. So after a while, we started hiding the gong clapper, the little device thing you hit the gong with, just to keep it out of out of Jim's hands.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can tell you as someone from the rest of the gaming world that you were not beloved for that particular
I
edition.
understand, but
But
and as the criminal responsible, not all my fault.
I would also say most people blame Jim because he was the one
Yes,
that wanted that did most of the
and
the gonging.
and rightfully so.
Um, yeah. So you know what you're talking about, that looseness. There was one of the big differences between different people at among the staff, right? Some people
Mhm.
were happy with it, just I'll run something, just play it off the cuff, and other
Yeah.
people wanted to have something written out.
Yeah, having
Um,
a plan. I mean, I normally do not, I normally do not wing it. Usually one of the ones of the people who is a planner and basically, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna set up this, okay, this is gonna work, and if it runs too long, we're gonna cut out this, and it just, I tend to go to conventions where I'm invited, and often they say, "Will you run something?" And I will say, "Sure." Because that's, I think, part and parcel of the whole, I'm showing up here. I'll be glad to, pitch in. So, and when I've done conventions, I've often, other conventions, TSR has sent me somewhere. I'm working in the booth. I'm selling, selling stuff. Talking to people about the product itself. So,
right. Um, are there any other of the convention ev- events that you ran that are memorable to you?
oof. No, we pretty much covered the big the fun stuff. We did a lot of tournaments. We did a lot of seminars, and that was easy. You get uh, doing seminars with Ed Greenwood was always uh, being the minder. Basically keeping him on course. But I'd have 3 questions, and I'd ask them, and basically it's off to the races and telling wonderful stories about how things happened in the realms, etc. So then that eventually I passed that requirement on to like Stephen Shen, as far as basically keeping control on Ed. In
Yeah,
fact,
minding
I
Ed was
first met.
definitely an assignment.
Hmm?
Said
I
minding Ed was definitely an assignment.
Yeah. Well, the first time I met Ed physically was at Gen Con.
Yeah.
We were talking about the smaller um, display area we had before we got the big castle that everybody remembers. And so we had to build it. And so we're putting it all together, and I'm holding up a, 2 by 8 beam, and there's this other guy holding up a 2 by 8 beam the other end, and someone's gone off to find the tool so we can hook it in correctly. And I said, well, well, since we're stuck here, hi, I'm Jeff Grubb. I'm glad to be here. And his response is, well, we've been working together for the past 6 months. I'm Ed Greenwood. And that's the first time Ed and I
That's
really met. We had been working over the phone and, sending stuff back and forth on Federal Express and everything up to that point.
that's a good Jeff. That's a good Ed imitation.
Why thank you. I work on it. Uh, Indian Joe has been reading most of. When you say DOS, you're talking about downloads. I assume you're talking about like PDFs as far as the all the Al Qadim material.
Yeah.
A lot of work done. It was like this. It was the sevens where yes. Well, when we did the original Al Qadim, we said we based it, and then we put this in the intro on the historical mythological Arabian Nights, on the Burton stories, the Tales 1001, and the really cheesy movies that we would watch on Saturday afternoon with like Guy Williams as Sinbad or Aladdin or something. So that was had a definite flavor and effect on the game itself. But we had a really good support product over the years. Wolf did something on the Assassin Mountain. I think Zeb did the Seven Voyages one that was basically sort of based on that type of story that came out of there. And
Uh,
she also suggests orbiting planets can change their configuration based on the ruling gods or alignment. Could be the jungle or a barren moon. That's true because, of course, in Dragonlance, we changed the constellations depending upon who the gods were and basically who was running things, and um, that was one of the reasons for the crystal shells is basically we could muck around with star systems without necessarily having to affect other people's campaign settings.
um,
Wow. Nesmith.
the
Wow. Nesmith. Wait, hang on. I'm looking at Dave Shepard's note. It goes, thought that Gene Raby's Nesmith from SJR7 After My Time Crin Space was supposed to be a replacement. The fact it's called Nesmith just makes me laugh because, of course, Bruce Nesmith was one of our designers. He came to us from Bethesda, who was the who did Elder Scrolls,
hmm.
and he was in charge of our computer games for a little while. He eventually left, went back to Elder Scrolls, and spent the rest of his time, designing with them.
Does Elder Scrolls go back that long?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, we brought Bruce in because that was a thing, because that was going to be the Elder Scrolls Online just is 10 years at this point, but we go way back to. I remember playing the first Elder Scrolls games and being frustrated by lockpicking.
Well, everyone gets frustrated by lockpicking.
Uh, and I send regrets to Dave. I do not have my original notes from um, uh, the AD&D Adventures in Space box set. So Void Scan and Retain Air, I have no idea. There's an awesome Elder Scrolls Online game. Do you know anything about it? Why, yes, Ed Stark. I know a great deal that it's just a wonderful experience. It's coming up on it. It's just finished its 10th year anniversary and it's still going gangbusters. It's got fantastic adventures. It's got great characters. It's got beautiful art. It's got incredible design. And we're working on stuff that we can't tell you about because, Ed will have me slain if I do.
Because for those of you who are not paying attention, that's where
Right.
Jeff's working these days, and that's where Ed's
With
working.
Ed Stark.
Ed Stark, everyone in the chat. Round of applause for Ed Stark.
Yeah. According to
um,
Wikipedia, it was 94 for Elder Scrolls. That doesn't sound right. But it might be. That's 30 years. So,
well, that would be about right for
and
bringing
Elder
Bruce and
Scrolls
Ed
may have
into Canada.
not been in business at that point. May have been doing other things. So, but I seem to remember he came from a computer game company
Well,
because we
when did
because
Bruce uh, join the company?
Bruce was there after we moved over to the new building. Oh goodness! He was there before we moved into the space above the on the second floor. We were in the old part. We were in the Siberia, which at that time was the area above the warehouse, the assembly area. So he was in around 84, 85. I don't know. We have to pin him down and invite him on.
We'll see if he's dumb enough. I mean, interested in joining.
Mhm.
I yeah, as I'm getting ready to get back into doing more of these live interviews and drawing pieces, I'm starting to reach out to folks again
Mhm.
and realizing, the first year of this show, when I was focusing on the 50th anniversary of D&D, was great. There are only so many people I could fit in that. There are a bunch of people that I never got on, and now I'm trying to mix it up to get a little beyond that, but not get away from it entirely. Right? I mean,
Well, I think getting the rest of the industry, we know people who are into business who have never touched TSR or have
yeah,
touched TSR tangentially, and they're excellent, people to chat with about, what we've done, where we've been, how do they, deal with, D&D, because if you're building your own fantasy role playing, that was the big 800-pound gorilla.
um, so I kind of going back to what we touched on a little earlier. Uh,
Hmm.
Originally, Gen Con and the gaming conventions pre-internet were the place you went to get the information you could. You got to meet the people that were doing it. You got
Right?
to see the seminars and do things.
What are we
That's
coming
not
up with?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's less of and you brought a lot of money because you bought things like you were saying, things you'd never seen before and things you might never
Yes.
see again.
Hmm.
One of the challenges for everyone involved, but particularly independent game companies these days, is that that's not what Gen Con is about for the attendees anymore. Not
Hmm.
primarily. It's not like no one buys anything, but it's not primarily what people are going there for. But the cost of exhibiting at a convention like this has done
Right.
nothing but go up, and that's, I think, one of the
True.
challenges.
And I think a lot of companies basically would come to Gen Con and be selling in the dealers area because that's how they're going to pay for the hotel rooms. That's
Right.
how they're going to cover bringing everybody out. And often it's a case even for known games that you
Yeah.
can't find something locally. At the last Gen Con, since Ed's here, um, he asked me to pick up a copy of Shadow Dark because you couldn't find it anywhere at the because they had sold out the print run and there was another one coming, but they were sold out. So I ended up buying. They brought the last copies of what they had to Gen Con to sell, and I think they sold out by Friday. They were just okay. We're done. So I ended up mailing from Gen Con the Shadow Dark book to Ed. So
Right. So it's not like commerce doesn't happen or it's not a place to go, but it's not.
yeah,
It's no longer the primary reason, and on top because of that, I think, or that's one of the reasons that not
hmm,
everyone goes to not every company goes to Gen Con anymore
true.
because it's prohibitively expensive to go there to exhibit
Or
there.
they can't get the space that they need because there's a limit
Right.
on that. But by the same token, there's a good chance if you go to Gen Con and you're buying a book, you're buying it from the designer
Right.
or the editor. And I've had a lot of chats in the dealer area where basically I started talking. He says, and do you want me to sign it? Sure. You worked on this? Yes. And we have a good chat and talk about, what he was thinking and what they were doing and, how everything fit together for them.
It's I mean it's a weird confluence or a weird mixture now of yeah, it's still a
Hmm.
place to go and meet the people that did it and to interact with them and to buy from
Hmm.
them. But there's a lot of people who a lot of the industry doesn't make it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I would say yes. No one goes there. It's too crowded. You know,
right, right.
I mean, it is a huge number of people there, but I've seen a lot of. I mean, TS Wizard of the Coast has been off and on as far as an official representation. They have people there selling stuff, but not necessarily. Like they don't have the big castle anymore.
Yes. Well, certainly when
Now,
after the Wizards buyout
mhm,
of
mhm,
TSR, when they decided to uh, get out of having Gen Con be something owned by Wizards and make it a company of its own
right,
was a
Hidden City.
yeah, that was
Mhm. Peter took it over, so yeah.
a big change
Yeah.
for everything, right? For
And I'll throw another piece in here. Something that's here now that you didn't see as much back in the day is a lot more cosplayers, a lot more people in costume, a lot more people, basically, dressing up as their character. And I've seen that evolve over time as well as we start seeing more and more people who are engaging in that part of the hobby as well.
yeah. Well, I think that uh, for me goes to a broader subject of the growth of convention culture
Yeah,
outside of this Gen Con was a gaming convention. That was the reason to go for a large part of its history. But uh, in in the new millennium, sometime around the start of the new millennium, the growth of cosplay culture of going to conventions for for that for that particularly began to rise and has become one of the dominant uh, parts of just about every large convention now.
sure. Because and people are all coming to the convention for different reasons,
Hmm.
and that's cool. Dave Weiss has joined us, so I just want to do a shout out to him. Hi, and yes,
Hello,
it is
David
that David
Wise.
Weiss. Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Uh,
it's a Gen Con. So a couple of years back, Gen Con
mhm.
actually, I had a freelance assignment for Gen Con to go over their most recent 5 or 6 uh, program books, like the
Hmm.
kind I'm drawing the cover of right now,
Right.
and just create an inventory of them of all the things that are happening because they had kind of lost track of all the things that were happening at their shows,
Oh
and
yeah.
it 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 came not they didn't really have a handle on how much was happening. Gen Con these days is really three or four or maybe even five different conventions under one
Hmm.
roof.
And I think that's still viable. I think that's
Yeah,
still a viable. People come to Gen Con for certain reasons. Even back in the day, they would come for the open. They would come for the dealers area. They would come for running a particular game that they don't get a chance to run, or playing in a particular game that they really wanted to be a part of. So this has just been part of the whole growth of it. Now, the challenge there is that, of course, trying to make everybody happy creates its own challenges,
right, right.
in that they're like, oh, I see you're helping the
Well,
chaosium
but
people.
now
Well, I see who you like.
it
Hmm.
goes even further because what you're just describing is it's still all game focused.
Hmm.
But Gen Con,
Yeah.
when I did this survey for them about 10 years ago, turns out Gen Con was the largest or second largest anime con. If all you did
Yeah.
was go to the anime, they had an anime
Hmm.
track in a specific hotel, dedicated rooms. You could spend the
Hmm.
entire weekend there and just be at an anime convention. There's the writers
Yes.
track, right?
There
You
is
could
a
do an
writer's track at
entire
Gen Con.
weekend just doing writers tracks and never touch the gaming, never touch the uh,
And last time I was at Gen Con, I pitched in to help at the writer's track too.
right.
As far as I was out there just talking about 50 years of D&D, how great the Forgotten Realms was, etc. But I was also talking with you know would-be writers, and basically helping out with that wing of the operation. So you're right, there are many different conventions that are all running. I mean, and the writers track had its own uh, group of people running it, which
Yeah,
was really cool as well. But
and
they
all
had their corner of the hotel, and that was where they were doing things.
and there's one of the things I was surprised at then, and it has grown a lot since then, is the film festival. They've got
Yes.
a film festival now, which used to be a Friday night only thing, and now it's running the entirety of the show with screenings of films going pretty much all day and into the evening every day. You could just go to a film festival and you'd be at Gen Con.
And Gen Con's not the only one doing this. San Diego, when I first, went to it, was primarily a comics convention, and has, taken off with a lot of media. And
Yeah,
basically, things debut there, and you bring down television shows, and you're going to promote the latest movie. So you're seeing a lot more of that going on in there, and again, a lot more cosplay as well. Before I lose the chat window, I had another one from Dave here. Why did TSR get you to make so many fast play adventure game mod products toward the end of the second edition era? What was the strategy there? Getting more people involved. The idea of short, inexpensive ways of adventures to basically give both an established DM something to basically run for an evening, as well as bringing new people and teaching them how to run and how to play. Eye of the Wyvern. Oh gosh, Eye of the Wyvern. There was a Minotaur one as well,
Minotaur,
and
the
there was
Minotaur something.
yeah, that was just amusing because my first product was Maze of the Riddling Minotaur. Um, the and I did one actually for Inquest magazine, which was a fungus-based adventure, which was a
Which
little,
I brought for you
they
to sign for me a couple of years
yes.
ago.
Okay, because they would Inquest, which is primarily a Magic the Gathering collectible card operation, where they're listing all the card prices and everything. They would drop in, cards and promotional material. In this case, a adventure for a little digest adventure, 8 pages, 12 pages for the Mushroom Queen. I remember being it. So,
I think part of that answer, who I don't know who asked it, but part of the answer there is it wasn't just TSR. That was a thing that was beginning to happen throughout the industry. That
mhm.
these creation of these quick play
Yeah,
products that you could give away at conventions and eventually online that could
because
so people could get a
the
taste of your
the
product.
box set was now costing what, $25. You
More. I
know,
mean, at that point, that was when we were about to take the core books up to
yep.
$50.
During third edition, we went to
Well,
50
third
50
edition,
bucks in third
we went
edition.
to $40.
Okay, that sounds about right. So, but this was a question for second edition. So
Right, but
my
those were
brain
the
my
last
brain is
few
financially
things.
theirs.
Those were the last few products before third
Yeah.
edition came. So the business team was
So it was
certainly
basically
already thinking
it was
that way.
definitely trying to get that inexpensive operation. I do not know about Peter Atkinson stepping back from Gen Con. I think he's still engaged with it. I just don't think he's leading the parade anymore. But you do bring up Michael does bring up a different thing, of course, of how things have changed. Gen Con TV. A lot, especially during the COVID years, a lot of conventions broadcast, but it was happening before as well. That basically they would be broadcasting the seminars that they have. So they're recorded. They're also going live, and people are tuning in. So they have like a reach that goes beyond the walls of the convention itself. Yes, Wrath of the Minotaur, Eye of the Wyvern, Crypt of the Smoke Dragon. The one for the D&D movie, which only shows up in the DVD as a PDF, and oh, that was painful. So
Well, they pay you to write, they don't pay you to publish.
that's right, that's right. And it's long enough years have passed that I can basically say, yeah, that one was a challenge.
So what was such a challenge about that one?
Part of it was, of course, they were working on the movie while we were doing the writing. Okay. And things changed as they went along, and getting a handle on how this stuff was simulating back into D&D was one of the steps forward. I don't think I saw the final movie until they gathered all of us up and we all went out to that movie theater at the mall in Tukwila, and saw the movie itself.
Well, I
The
mean,
sight of that.
the thing is, and anyone that's done uh, promotional work on for movies for
Oh yeah,
client
knows that
work,
it's not not
you never know what the final movie is going to be. You're always working with the
exactly.
script.
Or what illos are we going to use? What photos are we going to use? In the original script, the wizard had a pseudo dragon, and you can see it in certain shots. It was a puppet, and she was holding it, but it didn't get any mention in the final film.
Um,
I forgot
that's
about Crypt of the
right.
Smoke Dragon. Okay.
It's I presume since someone else brought it up, or did you bring it
Mhm.
up here, that
What?
maybe it's now available somewhere other than DVD? Because I bet a lot of people don't have
Oh
that
God.
DVD.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Wizards has in the last few years uh, made an extraordinary effort to make a lot of material available on the DM's Guild
That's true.
for purchase.
It's worth searching out. I know some people who are super interested in the Ismer D&D world from that movie. I can't see it come back. I can't see it otherwise. I can't see it coming back either, just because there are so many worlds and backgrounds and stuff that if they want to, and they want to keep doing new stuff as well. I mean, pushing the envelope, I think, is part of the whole world building thing.
I mean, the interesting thing for me, or one of the interesting things, is there's every world that we create is going to be someone's favorite,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
they're going to want more of it. But the nature of, as you just said, the nature of the beast is you want to be creating new stuff, and you
Right.
can't endlessly support all of them.
And well, Al Qadim, when we originally had a lifespan on it,
Mm.
because we said, okay, we can go this far and then we'll be done. Because I refer to it as the Greyhawk death spiral. where we felt we needed to do Greyhawk products every year, and they inevitably got shoved into, weaker months for sales, and we didn't throw, necessarily, we threw younger talent at it, and it basically was a much bigger challenge than we thought. So basically, sales continued to quietly decay, and we could have, basically uh, just stopped for a couple years and then bring it back with a big announcement.
Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy in our industry where if we stop producing material for it, suddenly the fans pronounce it dead, and then no one
Yeah,
will buy anymore. But then
right.
the clamor starts for more.
They're hinting Spelljammer. There was a lot of that in fifth edition until they released Spelljammer. Yeah,
Um,
and that's one. And Michael mentions comic book sales do the same decline after one, and that's true. Um, and that's why we see so many number ones and so many new starts and brave new beginnings, etc. Because they want to say it all starts here with a big splash and everything. Interesting thing though, of looking at the green sheets, which were our sales figures, that when the month that we would release a new Oriental Adventures adventure module, there'd be okay sales, but the sales of the core book would bounce a little. There'd be an uptick because people buying our distributors and retailers would basically say, oh, they're coming out with something new. I'll get more of that. So basically, get the core set back, and that was an interesting thing that we discovered as well, as far as continuing on lines.
which also business wise plays into the fact that the core books are always going to be the ones that are the most profitable
Hmm.
because they you keep adding sales on top of sales without having to
Right.
extra
Generate
creative
anything
work.
extra.
Yeah. Um, so neither you nor I clearly are at Gen Con this year. What
Right.
not being there, I always
I
find there's one or two
Mhm,
things that I wind up thinking, oh, that's what I miss. What is it that
mhm.
you find yourself being particularly sorry you can't be at on a Gen Con weekend?
One of the things is talking to other people I know in the industry.
Yeah.
Is hanging out with other designers who I've worked with, or who I'd like to work with, or who I've been, or I've basically I admire their work. Basically, one of the things about GaryCon that is very nice is we do an old home week for old TSR employees, and we get together, and we drink a little, and we basically swap old stories, and we catch up and find out what everybody's doing, and it's just been that's I think one of the nice things about conventions. But that's very very personal, as
Right.
opposed to
Right.
I like to go out and talk to fans, or I like to go check out the art show, or I like to watch a lot of anime. So it's something that we basically basically that I
Yeah.
do miss.
Well, I mean, I'm
uh,
with you. The thing I miss most is seeing my friends.
mhm.
And before
Yeah.
we continue with this point, if anyone's watching this in their hotel room in Indy, which I don't know
Hmm.
why it would be, but if you are, tonight is
Hmm.
the night of the Diana Jones
The
Awards.
Diana Jones
In
Awards.
fact, they're probably
Yes.
starting right about now. So find
It would
out
be
where they
9 o'clock
and head over
there,
there.
and tell us who won. You know.
Uh, yeah, but if you're an indie right now and you're enjoying this conversation, there's a thing you could be doing. You should be doing. Well, stick around with us till we finish our conversation, but then head
Right.
over to the Diana Jones Awards.
Hmm. I
Um,
got an invite. I had to say
yeah,
no, but because I'm not going to be there
I
now.
get invites every year, which is very nice of
Yeah.
the Diana Jones Award Committee.
Hmm.
That might have something to do with the fact that I've been a sponsor in the past, but I'm sure that
Oh, but last year, I'm afraid I had that lovely parting gift of COVID from
Yeah, that's what
the
I
convention,
don't
which is
miss.
one of the things I don't miss at all. And I just like we were all gathered there at that one bar, and we had people who basically had come from San Diego who had caught it, and they basically, sort of we had that
Yeah,
vector going in.
yeah, go straight. And San Diego was last week. Yeah, anyone who's going straight from one con to another is almost certainly
Wow.
patient zero.
They have a name. We won't pass it on here because it may be untrue. Um, I don't know. Dave put a question, got a Gen Con question, but it's about the '92 Gen Con. The website says Jeff Grubb and Zeb Cook did a TSR event called Touring TSR. How did that work? Did we do a slideshow, basically showing the
Was it a
company?
bus tour? Do you get everyone on a bus and take them out
No,
to?
no, no. We don't take them on a bus. It's too long a commute. Was it a slideshow? I have no idea. That has completely slipped past my brain.
It's another thing. Gen Con being as long a history as it has, and us being as
Oh
old as
gosh,
we
things
are.
just disappear. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that
I
has our
wonder,
name on it that we don't
I
particularly.
wonder if Zeb I remember if Zeb remembers. It's only been 30 years, so
Gen Con '92. Yeah, it's
yeah.
only 33 years ago. How is it you don't remember?
The art, by the way, is looking great.
Thank you, thank you. Well, that's always good. Good reference goes a long way.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
I know I tell you when we talk about this.
Hmm.
I like this format because it allows me to uh, talk and draw because I don't need to think from the create from nothing angle, which cuts
Hmm.
out my speaking ability. I've discovered that those parts of the brain same place.
Okay.
But if I'm interpreting what someone else has done, I can carry on with the conversation and keep drawing. Um, yeah, but thank you. Yeah, I think this has turned out pretty nice. I think this is going to be a fun one.
Good.
I of course still have a bunch to catch up on.
Well,
Let
we
me
can
take
add
a
this one to the pile.
yeah. So go here. You see all these rows of white unfinished. Those are ones from earlier in the year. I just, in fact, this week, just Monday, finished this from Rob Schwab's. The Rob
Ooh,
Schwab was a guest. This is an
Demon Lord.
homage to the Shadow of the Demon Lord cover.
Mhm. I really like your line strength. I really like how you're presenting, how you present it. And basically, the stuff pops a great deal. And I really, really like your artwork and how you're representing and doing the homages for these.
Thank you kindly.
Mm.
I mean that of course shows that I finished the 50 of the D&D or the 52 from the years of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm now beginning to look at the possibilities of putting together a collection and probably
Hmm.
that'll be crowdfunded in some way. Um, you know what I will say here: if you want to know more as these things happen, subscribing to our free newsletter at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com is the place to go to get that info. Uh, Subscribers, you know what? For sure, paid subscribers will get some kind of digital bonus. Free subscribers will probably get something nice too. And if nothing else, we'll get all the insides and probably a discount on whatever uh, gets gets made. But that's all just starting to come together now. But I've got to finish these others first. Up to this is the ninth
Hmm.
one from the second season. All right, well it's quarter past, so I think that I'm going to stop with the drawing here. Call that uh, good. And again, if you're a subscriber, I will send you the sketch version in its current state, and you will be able to look at that at home if you are a subscriber to 50 years in the dungeon.substack.com. So there, incentive. Go sign up. It's free. Um, and yeah, yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good.
Good.
Let's come over here to you and me again. Um,
Okay.
God, Gen Con. It always surprises me when we get to the weekend and then it's gone.
I'm amazed we had so many stories, you know.
I'm not. You know what? You know what? That's if there's a theme to this show
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
that's a behind the scenes theme. It's the guest saying, well, "I don't know if we can go for an hour and a half," and an hour and a half
Mhm.
happening, and we're just getting warmed up. um, what was Jeff's personal strength in the production of RPGs?
I have no idea. I'll be honest with you. I say, well, I'm good at getting words on paper. No, I've had problems and challenges there. I work well with others. Well, hang on. There's that one case, So I have no idea. I just
What do
consider
you
myself to have been very fortunate. Mhm.
what do you enjoy most about working on TTRPG products? When you're not doing it,
I
what is it that you long to do?
I love that opening start where we have the blank page, where we have, everything is possible because as soon as we're making decisions, as soon as we're deciding who is your character, what do they want, etc., you're making decisions. They're going to set down stakes in the ground and basically influence everything that follows that. So the opening section I love. And that applies for books and comic books and
Right,
just general fiction writing. And at the end, when you're done and it's published and you have beautiful art and great editors and everything, and people pat you on the head, they say, I like that as well. It's. I had an exterminator in the house today. We were dealing with some mice in the crawl space, and he saw a picture of the Marvel superheroes characters from the Advanced Marvel Superheroes as teddy bears,
right.
and he thought that was great. I said, "Oh yeah, that's based on a game I wrote," and he, he, I had to dig out the game. I showed him the game, and he basically took a picture of it to show the guys back at the office. Just like I have my Marvel superheroes game, and that is very rewarding as well. That feels, like that's a nice ego boo, and it's a team effort, and between those 2 points is 50 miles of bad road, and it's often a struggle, and it's worth it. So,
I would say my answer is similar,
hmm
except I define it a little more. I like working with a team on putting on that stage.
yeah,
It's not because if it's just me on that stage, I don't love it as much. But the chance to work with a team and everyone's throwing ideas together and taking a rough thing I had and seeing how it gels with what you said or what Sue said and suddenly we've got a big thing that I never would have thought of before.
yes, when we're working with teams, it's fantastic, and that's, I think, a good thing about game design. Just writing is a relatively lonely sport.
Yeah,
It's you and the keyboard. You're there, even when you're doing it as part of a larger team. That's when you're, on your own. You're flying by yourself. You're not in formation. You don't have like all the support and talent and abilities of everybody. And you've got feedback, and everybody's working because they got a piece of the action. They feel they've contributed to something. This is again, we talked way back at the beginning of this conversation. We talked about being an engineer, and often being an engineer is figuring out what the client wants and how you can do it,
right.
and game design has that same challenge in the fact of what do we really want here? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? So,
Hmm.
okay, that's my benediction. So,
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. So Gen Con's going on this weekend. We'll be thinking of our friends. You and I are
Mhm.
both supposed to be at Gamehole Con, right? You're going to Gamehole Con in.
No, I'm not doing Game
Oh, you're
Hall
not.
Con this
Oh,
year.
well,
I'm
I'm going to
I'm
be at Gamehole
I'm
Con.
I accept. I've taken the year off. So,
I'm not gonna. It may be local, but I'm not gonna be at
PAX.
PAX. No,
Yeah,
no, I never get invited to PAX, and
I'm
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 not
there. Mike
complaining. I'm not
Seliker.
complaining.
Mike
I'm just
Seliker
saying
is putting together a panel discussion on
yes.
superhero games. So that's how, he called me up and said, "You want to show up?" And I said, "You want to give me a ticket?" And he said, "Sure, I got a pass." So
He doesn't need me.
I'm going to
The
show up.
game that I worked on, he worked on too. He's got that
Yes,
covered.
exactly. You got it covered.
All right. Well, folks want to follow you, Jeff. They should check out Elder Scrolls Online.
Uh, well, actually, I've got a blog,
Yeah,
grubstreet.blogspot.com.
I've probably
Sadly, I
given.
don't talk about games nearly as often, other than, hey, I've picked up a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Take a look. I usually get like theater
Well,
reviews and local politics and that sort of thing.
you do write up interesting. You do interesting write ups of the games we try out, and as well as the ones
Yes.
we read. So,
Well,
yeah, no,
and
this is
that's,
strong gaming.
to do a real review, I feel you have to play the game.
Right.
And we have played a number of these. We did that whole Berlin the Wicked City with Cthulhu 7th edition. So basically, both 7th edition and the Wicked got reviews. So, but because it takes so much time to really get into a game, it takes a while to,
Right.
basically get around to writing it up. I really should do one for the well.
So
So,
what's the address, the web address again?
Grub Street
G R
dot
U B
blogspot
B. If I typed it up
Street.
ahead of time, I'd bring it on, but I didn't. I
Okay,
apologize.
okay, that's okay. Grub Street, Grubb, st, one word, street dot blogspot. There's an ancient vendor.
Blogspot.
.com. Blogspot. I have a blog that's been there like 25, 30 years. So
So there's a lot that people can go and pour over and get your
there's a
opinion.
lot of stuff you can dig up in there. So
Um,
have you ever written about Divil? No,
Div-
Divil. Divil was a game that I designed in an hour
hmm,
for Steve Winter, and he still sells it. And every so often he says, "Here's another $5." So, and it's the good guys have won. They've conquered the universe, and you're a devil, and everyone hates you.
okay.
So it's very simple, very straightforward, but it was designed in an hour. And someday I will have another hour, and I'll do a
Very good.
revised version.
Divil second edition.
It'll be 128 pages long
All right,
and hardback
Jeff.
and
Thank.
gold foil.
I can't wait. I want it. I want it. I want it. All right.
uh,
Well, I'm gonna take you off screen. Thank you for
okay.
stopping by. It's been fun talking about Gen Con's past and present, and hanging out with you for a bit.
It's always a pleasure to be here. So,
Hold on. I'll do an outro, and we'll say goodbye.
okay.
So there we go. That was our 50 Years in the Dungeon Gen Con show. Had a good time chatting about the 56, I think 56 or 58-year history of Gen Con and our involvement in it. Thank you all for tuning in live. I know we've had a bunch of people here who've been watching. If you're watching on replay, thank you too. It would be a really big favor to me if you could take a second and hit the like button. Give it a thumbs up or a like or a heart, whatever it is on the platform you're watching. That is super helpful to me. Also helpful, particularly once we've gone to the replay, if you could take a second and leave a comment. Just like, hey, what a fun conversation, or Jeff's so much smarter than you. Anything. I'll take it. I'll take the feedback. These things are very helpful because they show the platform that you're on that this is a program they should share with other people. We can get more people to come and enjoy it with us. So please, if you're of a mind, if you want to know what you can do to help, that's what you can do to help. If you want to do more to help, I have a Patreon. You want to join there? This is I'm trying to grow it so it can be a bigger part of my day to day, week to week, year to year work, so I can do more of the things I want to do. Those are the things I have to do. to pay the rent. So you can stop there. There, of course, is a free opportunity there. You can just become a free member of the Patreon, or there are several different levels and different awards for being behind there. And all of them help to show the world that you think the stuff I'm doing is kind of keen. And as I said before a few times, we have the 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com free newsletter for this show. Please go sign up there. Again, helps to promote the show. I will be back. I'm doing a lot of live streaming this week because of Gen Con week. I'll be back tomorrow night with my regular random encounter show. It will have a Gen Con theme. So check that out. I'll be back on Friday in the afternoon Pacific time, think 4 p.m. Pacific time, for an event that Owen Casey Stevens and I do every year that we're not, well, we do it every year whether we're at Gen Con or not. When we're not, it's a live stream. When we are, we hold court on a couch in one of the lobbies in a hotel in Indianapolis. As it is, we have our convo on the couch. Big open ask me anything and see who else will show up and chat with us, because we got lots of friends in the gaming world who sometimes like to just pop by. So come on back and see us. And on Saturday, I have another kind of open conversation with Jeff Quick, another friend of the show. He and I, well, he designed a card game which is releasing at Gen Con. By the time you're watching this, it's probably released already, called Necromancer. I did all the art for it, so we're going to get together and have a totally not associated with Gen Con seminar on Saturday afternoon. Check whatever platform you're watching this on, check my schedule. You'll see all of those coming up. Please join as many as you can. For those of you at Gen Con, hope you're having a real good time. Wish I could be there with you, but I'll be here online instead. So until tomorrow night, everyone, take care. Bye.